But for the next 30 minutes or so, let's go straight over to my next guest. Really pleased he could join us. He is the independent MP for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe. Welcome, Rupert.
Evening, Kevin. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Now, you've been tweeting today, which is handy because it's given me a couple of topics that I can discuss with you, and they're important topics. First of all, you tweeted, of course there are British rapists. Obviously we know that. Sadly, they are our problem. They are scumbags and they should be treated as such, with an incredibly harsh sentence. We all would agree with that. But you go on to say that the existence of British rapists does not mean that we have to continue importing thousands and thousands of foreign rapists. And what we're talking about here is the worrying rise in the hundreds of charges being levelled against criminal charges, serious criminal charges against asylum seekers living in these asylum seeker hotels and sometime in these houses of multiple occupancy, our asylum seekers. More and more of them are being charged with serious crimes, and more of them are being charged, even more worryingly, with sex crimes, with rape and sexual assault. And by the way, it's not only women. There's an alarming number of sex crimes against children are being levelled against, charges levelled against asylum seekers. We have to be careful with this charges business because they get arrested, they get accused of these offences, then they get charged, and with our glacial justice system, they probably won't be in court for at least 18 months, maybe 2 years. But there's a clear picture emerging. We have for many years now been importing thousands and thousands and thousands of young men of sexually active age, about whom we know nothing. We let them come across the channel, and basically we let them into the country. We put them up in these places all around the land, and guess what? Some of them are committing horrific rapes and sexual assaults, sometimes paedophile assaults. And this is a massive problem, isn't it?
Well, I feel very strongly about it, Kevin, as you can tell from the tweets we put out. I mean, obviously, illegal migration is a problem. And as we know, that's huge under Keir Starmer, despite the fact that he's constantly said he'll stop the boats or smash the gangs, I think is his favourite sort of expression, which he clearly hasn't done. So illegal migration, and if you look at pictures of people coming to the country every day, it's not refugees, it's not women and men with their families, it's young fighting age men who are not respectful of our extremely high trust society. They come from a very different culture and they have a very different view of women. So it's not surprising that we have a problem with the illegal migrants. As you quite rightly say, they are perpetrating crimes, and we've got those details which we publish, to a far higher extent than the domestic population. Now, legal migration is equally a problem because I think the government, the state, is not capable of properly, if you like, filtering those people who are going to make a contribution to our society from those who aren't. And as a result of that, we end up again with more of the same. The liberal elite likes to say, well, of course, the majority of rapes are perpetrated by white people, not by any other form of illegal or legal migrant. Well, that may be true, but then we are a majority white population still, so that's hardly surprising. But as a percentage of those people who come into the country, it's far higher. The incidence of the Pakistani rape gangs, which we're, as you know, analysing through our rape gang inquiry, which 20,000 people have very generously donated over £600,000 to. And we're about to produce a report to show that this has been happening in over 100 towns and cities across the UK. So this is systemic. This is going right to the heart of Britain, and it's been going there really since the early 2000s. And the staggering thing is that an establishment that appears to crack down on any form of Lucy Connolly-like misguided social media posting has turned a blind eye to this mass rape and it's linked to drugs, and it's linked to crime. It's turned a blind eye to it because it fears being called racist, and because it fears its post-war multicultural experiment has failed or is failing. And it goes everywhere. It's not just one part of the establishment, it's every part of the establishment. And I think they know it's a systemic failure. I think they know that if they link the police databases, they will find the pattern, they will find the link to county lines drugs, they'll find the link to organised crime. But I think there's no appetite to actually what I would call enforce the law without fear or favour, because I think it's almost got too big. So as a result of that, what they have to do is clamp down on anybody who points out the sort of erroneous ways that have been allowed to take place for really, I mean, honestly, Kevin, far too long.
Here's something, Rupert, that we have to take very seriously. This is a fact. This is a statistical fact. And these are the kind of slices of information that only now are British people being allowed to have access to. It is this. This is a fact. UK-based foreign nationals living in this country are, listen to this, 70% more likely to be convicted of sex crimes than indigenous British citizens. Now, you know, we ought to take that statistic alone extremely seriously. But judging by our approach to the migrant crisis, the fact that we continue to just let unknown young men from very different cultures into the country, we're not taking this statistic seriously, are we?
No, we're not. And I think the Emily Maitlisses of this world, as I said, the sort of liberals who they do as I say, not as I do merchants, because most of them send their children to public school and they live in very smart parts of London, and they certainly don't have any of these people being settled anywhere near their children's schools, and they don't have to suffer the damage which is happening across the UK to the fabric of our society. So, I mean, look, there's a very, what I call, malign attitude towards this. And I think we've played our part both in exposing the extent of it in terms of how common it is amongst a lot of the people who've come into the country. But equally, I think we're putting pressure on the government to start collecting more data, which they haven't been doing. And in Parliament, I think I played my part without being in any way big-headed in moving the Overton window in terms of my speech in January about the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs, which brought tears to one Labour MP's eyes, but the fact is it's the truth. And in Parliament, one should be able to speak the truth. After all, if you can't speak the truth in Parliament, where can you speak the truth, Kevin? And that's the problem. I think Parliament has lost sight of the truth. It's been hollowed out. It's no longer what it should be under the British Constitution. And we are run by a bunch of woke permanent secretaries who are not elected and who don't necessarily share the same view of Britain as the majority of what I call decent, sensible, tax-paying, honest Middle England.
And, you know, for your information, I don't know if you've heard this already, but just to sort of underline the nature of the problem that we've got, the escalating problem that we've got going on here. Today, another asylum seeker, one more asylum seeker living at the Bell Hotel in Epping, has been charged with a serious sexual assault, this time of a man, actually. So a man has been seriously sexually assaulted. So, as you know, for about the past 3.5 weeks or so, the people of Epping have been protesting about this asylum seeker hotel in their midst, because a resident there about 3 weeks ago was charged with sexually assaulting a very young girl, 14-year-old girl. So they've been furious about this. Now there's another one. Let me ask you this, Rupert. Big story today. The police have sort of announced that from now on, if they think it's necessary and if they fear that keeping this information would be might be incendiary and cause public unrest, that they may from now on release some background details about those charged with rapes and serious offences. So in other words, both the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary last week conceded that we, the British people, did have a right to know when someone is charged with rape or sexual assault or even violence offences, serious offences. We have a right to know whether or not they're asylum seekers. We have a right to know their ethnicity. The Prime Minister and the Home Secretary said this. Today, we've had a release from the police saying, yes, we are going to start to tell people this, but only in some cases, and only in some high-profile cases, and only in cases where we feel that if we didn't tell the public, it may cause unrest. So in other words, they're not going to give us this information. They're going to carry on not telling us that when there's a rape, that the suspect is an asylum seeker or a migrant or a foreign national. We have a right to know this, don't we? That information cannot possibly affect their trials. We should be told this, and yet we found out today that essentially in most cases we still won't be. That's wrong, isn't it?
It's totally wrong, Kevin. I mean, there should be one rule for everybody, and the rule should be total transparency. Ultimately, the British people are the boss, and the police, the civil service, and the government are the servant. They are serving the British people. The British people are the people who pay the taxes and who vote, and they should be treated properly. They should have totally transparent information on a consistent basis. The last thing we want, and this is what's happened, this is why I say Parliament's been undermined, because this nanny knows best culture, which thinks that they're going to tell us that information that they want to tell us. So they'll tell us if it's a white man who's perpetrated the crime, but they won't if it's an illegal migrant, because they're worried about what they call community stability. So no, I think it should be one rule. It's a bit like policing. Policing should be without fear or favour, and it should apply equally to everybody. And clearly it hasn't been. And I think we're hoping to have our rape gang hearing in November. We've done an awful lot of work on it. Unlike the J report, which has cost 186 million, ours can only cost 600,000, which is what we've raised. But we're going to come up with some pretty punchy conclusions, and we're coming out with a report in the next few days which shows the extent of this issue. So I think it has to be a totally transparent state. It's like tax, Kevin. Tax should be effectively limited to the actual government expenditure should be limited to the tax stake. That way you keep the state honest. And the state's become dishonest. It's become dishonest. Yeah. I actually think the police have become dishonest. I mean, my experience with the police has not been a good one recently. I think it's quite common. I think Lucy Connolly's experience with the police is not a good one. I think, the police have become almost a dangerous arm of the state. And there's nobody now holding the police to account. Because if you have a weak front bench and you have a country that's run by the permanent secretaries, it's actually the cabal of the permanent secretaries and the Association of Chief Police Officers, ACPO, which ends up basically being in charge of policing. And I think our judiciary is now complicit. So I think there's a huge Augean Stables job to be done on the entire state. Mm. And that's why we've got Restore Britain set up, because if those people who agree with us, the only one way we're going to change this is a mass movement which morphs into complete metamorphosis of the way in which Britain is run. Because having spent a year in Parliament, I can tell you it's not working properly. It's not working in the interests of the British people. And I think we can all feel our country, which used to function unbelievably well, slipping through our fingers. And I can't appeal to people enough to say, if you agree, you must sign up and you must give the power to people who you trust to try and act as the agents for change, not in 3 or 4 years' time, Kevin. It's got to start now.
I agree.
Because I actually genuinely tell you, if we don't start to change it now and we don't radically change it in 29, and when I say radically change it, I think we've got to have a group of people who hold to account those people who damaged the interests of the British electorate over a very long period of time in an extremely underhand, devious and dishonest way.
Yeah.
And that goes really across. So the rape gang inquiry is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, that shows you, I think, how dysfunctional the state has been. But it's not just there. It's the Department of Work and Pensions handing out billions to 9 million people who are of working age who aren't working. It's the Motability scam. I mean, honestly, I could go on for hours.
I know we are in a terrible state. But the rape gang scandal is similar to what we're talking about. There's this propensity on the part of the authorities, on the part of the police, of the government, of politicians to keep the public in the dark, to keep secrets from the public, because they think we're children and we can't be trusted. And if we knew that the local rapist was an asylum seeker, that we'd all have a riot. Well, they've got to stop treating us like children because it is not the way forward. Secrecy never works out well. Rupert, let's go to break now. When we come back, we'll talk about the epicenter of British dysfunctionalism right now, and that is, of course, the migrant crisis. That next, folks. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm still talking to the independent MP for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe, and also the leader of the movement, not a party, the movement, the Restore Britain, which wants to, I hope, restore some kind of order to this country that seems to be falling apart at the seams, mainly because the seams in terms of our borders don't seem to be observed one bit at all. Now, you tweeted today, Rupert, again very helpfully, if I may say so, for this show. I'll say it again, legal immigration is a bigger problem than illegal immigration. Well, let's talk about legal immigration first, but I do want to talk to you about the small boat crossers as well, because that is spiralling out of control right now. It is a ludicrous situation. But you're right, we were discussing earlier about the problem of the small boat crossers, the dinghy crossers, thousands of young men breaking into this country, being allowed then to just wander around. We know nothing about them, and guess what? Some of them turn out to be sexual abusers, paedophiles and rapists. Well, you're right. You know, legal immigration is a massive problem. We are letting in something like, you know, not far off 1 million people legally every year. And by the way, we don't know much about them either. Apparently the form they have to fill in usually sort of says, have you ever committed a crime? You know, so they're not likely to say, yes, I have. I've committed lots of crimes. I'm actually a rapist, a convicted rapist. Would you let me in? So they have to say, did you ever commit a crime? They all say no. So we have a similar problem. We don't know anything about these people we're letting in legally. And
hey, Kevin, we're a high trust society. They're not necessarily from high trust societies. They're from autocracies where they don't have the same code within them that we have. They don't have this huge history of democratic sort of acceptance and, as I say, high trust. So they're almost, it's cultural oil and water, and you have to apply the rules that they apply to each other to them, not the rules that we apply have always applied to ourselves. So it's totally different. And you know, I am not against immigration. I'm literally pro-immigration if we are bringing in people who are going to fill skill holes in our society and who are going to make a general contribution and sign up to the way in which we live our lives and the way in which we operate our democracy. But unfortunately, this isn't the case. So these are people with a very different outlook on life. And all we're doing is ultimately creating a rod for our own back. And I just can't for the life of me understand why the people who are perpetrating this, and don't forget Boris Johnson was as big a perpetrator of this on the British people, having said he was going to reduce migration. He actually increased legal migration almost more than anybody else, started with Blair, increased with Cameron and Theresa May, despite the fact they protested they were going to reduce it on a almost a broken record-like basis. And then with Boris, it exploded. And I think government accountability disappeared with COVID. I think COVID was a time when bad decisions were made, when the state basically ran out of control. It printed money on a completely ad-lib basis. It handed it out like confetti. And then it wondered why you get this dysfunctionality akin to a communist regime where the main, as I've said before, and I never said it on your show, but the main quality you needed to survive within a communist environment was to be a good liar. Because the last thing you did was tell the state the truth. Because if you told the state the truth, it basically took all your money off you, and effectively reduced your standard of living. Which is why you had all these drab cities, and you went through this drab front door, and you opened up into a sort of palace inside. So everybody was living a lie, Kevin. And this is what happens when you get too much statism. You get dishonesty. You get people who are not principals, they're agents, and you end up with chaos in the end. And unfortunately, you then have to have a complete breakdown before you return to the principles of private ownership, private enterprise, and a society that actually respects each other and works together. And this is where I find the Labour government really irritates me when they talk about we're not going to tax workers. Well, Kevin, workers are a function of the companies that they work for. So if you tax the companies they work for, you are going to affect the workers. You are going to damage their interests. To me, it's as plain as a pikestaff. And I just
they're going to tax workers as well. They're going to have to.
Well, workers they're suffering the consequences, Kevin. They will do. They can't fail to.
Yeah, but they're going to have to directly, raise income tax. There's no doubt about that, because they backed themselves into a financial mess. Let me just ask you though about the illegal migrant crisis. I mean, what the hell should we do? Because it's now 52,000 migrants have come across the Channel illegally since Keir Starmer took the helm of the good ship Great Britain. And in the past week, since last Wednesday, which by the way was the day that his latest great deterrent came into play, became operational, one in, one out. Well, it turns out that one out is actually over 2,000 in, none out. Something like 2,200 migrants have come in since he brought in his great new deterrent. So that has not worked. They're coming at the rate of one every 11 minutes. To say this is spiralling out of control is the understatement of the century. Starmer clearly has no idea what to do. What should he do, Rupert?
Well, you can't trust Starmer with anything, Kevin. You can't trust him with the deal he struck in the Chagos Islands, which was, in my view, treason. You can't trust him with what he's doing in Gibraltar. He'll probably do the same in the end with the Falkland Islands. He is giving away things that he shouldn't be giving away to the EU. He's a soft touch, and he's not really fit to be Prime Minister. Unfortunately, he won by default. I call it the Labour landslip election victory.
And he won because the loveless landslide, wasn't it?
It was a landslip because he got a very low percentage of the vote, and people were so disaffected with the Tories, and quite rightly, that they had no alternative, and you can't possibly vote the Lib Dems or the Greens or anybody else anywhere near power. So the only default position was Labour, and unfortunately, the Fabian, the deeply Fabian Labour Party now has an agenda, and it won't be transparent, it won't be honest, it doesn't tell people what it's intending to do. But that's the course we're taking. So no, I don't trust Keir Starmer. I've told you the Australians got this right, and we can get it right. We have to, basically, there are lots of islands offshore Scotland and England. Rona is an uninhabited island. We can easily take these people straight to an offshore island, put them in a tented camp, ensure they've got enough food, and then tell them that when they're ready to go home, we'll facilitate their return home. But they shouldn't ever be allowed to land on the mainland. And when I see the RNLI and the and Border Patrol bringing these people in, providing them with blankets and water, and they're then going to go into probably a four-star hotel, and then be distributed across the UK, and damage the fabric of Britain and the quality of life for a lot of the people living here. They'll probably end up being a burden on the state, and we're then told that our taxes are going up to pay for all this nonsense. So I can tell you, the British are beginning, I think, to become very disaffected with this. They're very
seriously. I think
they're very decent people. They don't want to in any way do down anybody else. But we are not the provider of global welfare, Kevin. We are. The responsibility of the state is to the British people who pay their taxes, who've helped build this country into what it is, and to bring people here who are ultimately going to freeload on the back of the British taxpayer in ever-increasing numbers. In the end, we will either end up with social unrest, or we're going to end up with a tax strike from those people who are just going to refuse to pay their taxes. And I've got quite a lot of people who keep saying to me, I don't feel I should be paying my taxes. Well, do you know what? It's illegal not to pay your taxes, but there is an increasing argument to say that people are not basically getting good value for the tax that they're passing over to a deficient state, which is not now acting in their best interests.
The state is in a terrible state. Let me ask you a last question, Rupert. I've got a slight bone to pick with you. I was on air, and you tweeted, and I announced it. I said, oh my God, Rupert Lowe's up in Great Yarmouth. He's just seen some migrants about to sort of pitch up on the beach in East Anglia. I thought, my God, they've gone all the way around the coast of Kent, all the way up there. Well, it turned out they weren't migrants. They were some charity rowers raising money for a very worthy cause. And you, I believe, gave them £1,000 for your mistake. Tell us, how did you feel when you worked out?
Well, it was actually a highly entertaining event in the end, and I found it incredible that it made national headlines almost for an entire day. I mean, they do say, Kevin, that any publicity is good publicity.
But as long as they spell your name right.
we certainly got a lot of publicity out of it. But yes, I mean, the good people of Great Yarmouth, who are fantastic people. I'm actually down there tomorrow and on Friday. So I'm taking a pair of binoculars down to the office so that we can actually scan the coast a bit more effectively. But these lads, whether they played us or not, I don't know. But I'm pleased to say I think we've helped them raise quite a lot of money for motor neurone disease, which is a very noble charity. Yeah. I had actually given some money to the motor neurone disease charity a couple of years ago when my wine merchant's partner died of motor neurone disease, and he had a whip round for them. So they're a very, very good charity. It's a terrible disease. Anyway, these lads were 800 meters offshore wearing black hoodies. So it was to the naked eye in a dinghy that looked not more like a sort of a migrant dinghy than a rowing boat. So I think it was an honest mistake. And there was a crowd of people from Great Yarmouth who were watching them progress around the coast, and were extremely concerned, as you say, and keen to understand how a migrant boat had ended up quite so far up the coast of Britain. But
I hate to say it, Rupert.
What I'm delighted to tell you is that both myself as the local MP and the good people of Great Yarmouth are on our guard, a bit like Captain Mannering, against any form of illegal landing on the beaches of Great Yarmouth, Galston, Hemsby, Caister, wherever it happens to be. We're going to be on our guard, Kevin, and we're going to try and show the rest of Britain the way to protect your coastline.
I fear, Rupert, it's probably only a matter of time before some real migrants turn up there. But in the meantime, it was very funny, and you did a good thing, and they ended up with an extra £1,000.
Yes, I gave extra £1,000 because I thought, credit to them, they're doing a great job. We didn't actually say migrants were landing, we said if migrants are landing on Great Yarmouth, in Great Yarmouth, they should be immediately deported. So we've actually made a complaint to the BBC. I'm expecting to get another complaint from the BBC, who seem to enjoy trying to beat me with every stick they possibly can.